So, coming up next to the stage, we've got an amazing performer. Jake Marmer is a poet and performer. His first record, Her Pneumatic Stomp, brought together diverse poetic traditions, jazz, klezmer, new and ancient improvisation techniques. His poetry collection, Jazz Talmud, was published by Street Meadow Press in 2012. He frequently contributes to Forward and Tablet magazine and is the co-founder of North America's first Jewish poetry retreat at Klez Canada Festival. Please welcome my Jake brother in arms, Jake Marmer, to the stage.
Ready to roll?
Ready.
Yeah. Hey, it's nice to be here. I mean, I'm always here, I guess. But what makes this special is a guest I brought with me tonight, a legendary bass player, Stu Brotman. Give it up for Stu. Now, Stu is a pioneer of klezmer revival in the States, and he played with a band called Brave Old World. Great band. But also Canned Heat, Kaleidoscope, blues and folk bands. Yeah, really, just truly a legend. So it's a privilege. It's the first time we're playing together. We've rehearsed for 5 minutes. Which is how you do this kind of jazz and poetry sort of a performance. Yeah, so, you know, in these kinds of situations, mindful, thoughtful people say, you know, be in the moment, be in the now. So this poem is called Not Here, Not Now. In the room with rolled up carpets. In the room of reversed roles. In the empty room. In the room with a bulging windowsill. In the room overhanging a cliff. In the cliff notes of a room. In the room where nobody coughs. In the room where interpretations have no name. In the room named after an interpretation. In the room that's tantamount. In the room where at one time. In the never before room. In the room where it all happened. In a room where all that happened is stored. In the storage room. Thank you. I think I can do without a mic. You guys can hear me okay? Yeah. All right, cool. So I'm going to read 2 poems from my book called Jazz Talmud, where I was experimenting with things that Talmud does, and I wanted to see if you could do that with poetry. So there's a thing in the Talmud that you can't cook on Shabbat, except that if the thing is already cooked, and you're cooking it, you're not really cooking it, it's cooked, right? So like the cookage has been reached, you know? So riffing on that idea, this piece which is called The Laws of Dream Cooking. Ein bishul achal bishul. There is no cooking after cooking. Once a dream has been sitting in the oven for 2,000 years, it's done. It's cooked, and nothing that happens to it afterwards, in or out of the oven, is considered cooking. Now, this is if your dream is a solid. But if your dream is a liquid, it may have long evaporated, and you are deluding yourself in front of an empty, burning pot. But if your dream is a sound, an invisible musical cloud, then you are the one who is getting cooked on the endless spinning vinyl as you're zapped into music by needles of history. Now, next piece is called Loophole, and also that's also a Talmudic poem. And you know, in the Talmud, you know, it seems like it's about laws, but really, and forgive the metaphor, like loophole is the holy grail. Like that's the ultimate intellectual, abstract, transcendent moment, the loophole. So this is about a loophole, about like things you're not supposed to touch on Shabbat, but then again, right? So, so it starts with a quote from the Talmud, and then it goes into the riff. Said Rav Ashi on Shabbos, laying down on the straw bed, you must not move straw with your hands, but you can move it with your body. If you must move that which cannot be touched, move it. Touching it, in a way nobody would ever think of touching it. Being something that doesn't happen, it won't happen. When there is no word to describe the thing that you're doing, you can get as close as you like. And that is the secret of closeness. To the center of the great untouchable, the great ungraspable, great invisible, moving near you like a gullible bird, moving straight into your Talmudic glove, set at the gaping mouth of the loophole. This is called concept score number 41. And there are concept scores 20-something and 30-something, but this is 41. And it's sort of like, it's like a poem, but it's also a score, so it's implicit of some kind of a musical situation. You'll see. The sense that your life amounts to nothing is the song's forgotten chorus, which one lone caller remembers, and he can sing it backwards too. And so, he wins tickets to whatever giveaway of the day is, and he shouts into the cell phone, and sends regards to his best friend, and to his mom, and you can hear the dog barking in the background, barking with pure happiness. And many of our listeners are humming the song's bridge, swinging it so hard, the whole town can barely hold on. By the time they're up to the coda, there are guts hanging out of every radio. Yes, sir, some of the best looking guts in a whole Western civilization. We have done ourselves proud here. Now, let's dance. Now, one of the many awesome things about working here is that we have this creative writing reflective practice where my students come up with prompts and they write. And I get to write too. So the first poem that I read to you, I wrote here actually, during one of those reflective practices. And this is another one. It's called One-Liner. It's not a one-liner, but it's called a one-liner. I was gonna write something, and now, instead, it has to be etched on my brain. I don't want to lose it. Just this one thought, one line. I have to have two pens with me, always. I see two pens with my mind's eye. 3 pens, whole mouth full of pens. I'm sweating ink. I can't think of anything but this one line. I can't forget because I can't write it down. Homer and those Greek bard improvisers didn't have this problem. But imagine if they did. I don't want to call this thing a Jewish disorder. It's just about not having a pen and being suspended in the air without access to stuff. I don't need stuff. Not at this point. I have a thought, a one-liner, silver lining to this experience of no longer having anything. It's not about being. It's not about being. It's not about being dead. It's about having a thought. One thought and a broken pen at the end of a long, empty room. So, given that I'm performing this too, it only makes sense to use this poem called Klezmer Bulldog. And I wrote it at a Klezmer concert. So there it is. Here's that. Klezmer Bulldog with accordion folds on his face. Somewhere in these folds there must be a smile, a bulldog kind of smile. Bulldog, loyal servant of the human misery. Angry clown on strike. He's not gonna wear some doggy coat. He's not gonna wash his feet. He's not gonna make it into your little bag, man. Klezmer Bulldog, wobbling, is flirtatious. Drool is affectionate. This is not about good looks, baby. Not about some feel-good West Coast reggae chant. He wants to come and growl into your tuba. So take out the tuba and let him growl into it. Beyond sarcasm, beyond. Into intestinal neorealism. Gritty, but very personable. It's really hip now. Klezmer Bulldog. Imagine him on the cover of J Weekly. He went sledding in Caucasus. Saved babies in the Urals. Raised Klezmer flag on top of Carpathian mountains. All of his friends have these sad, big clarinet noses. But he has a pug, a little button. There is a conspiracy theory that he is really Babylonian, Assyrian, Mongolian, Balkan, French, but no, he's only himself, a little Klezmer Bulldog, and he won't let you forget that. No, he will not let you forget. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to finish with a piece called, well, it's a poem that needs a title, except that it's also called, it has one. It's called Poem That Needs a Title. So it needs it, it has it, but it needs it. Usually people, want what they can have, but in this case it's sort of like, it's here, but it wants it. And also, the thing that the poem doesn't have is a body, in a conventional sense. Which is to say, it doesn't exist, but, there's still time, and I don't want to give it away. But what it has is, I don't want to call it soul, or, I'm too rational for that sort of stuff. And I think I'm friends, like some people. But call it, presence, or a trace, or memory, something like that. So I want to say, it's a deliberate title, and a desperate one. And I would go as far as saying it's desperately deliberate, or deliberately desperate, whichever way you want to put it. And the thing about poetry is like, it's all about the need, bad need, like the blues, Bad need for what? It's irrelevant. Yeah, I mean, it could be something inappropriate, which is why it's appropriately irrelevant. And which is why it's, I guess, appropriately called Poem That Needs a Title. And it doesn't have a body, but like I said, there is still time, and I don't want to give it away. So there it is, you know. So, see, any poem, I guess, is like this squeezed out need. That's the essence of a poem, a need that's being squeezed. So like an orange, right? So you imagine like you have an orange that's getting squeezed and into a paper cup, and you give the paper cup to, you know, all the members in the audience, and people drink it. Some people like it, some people don't. Everybody who needs extra credit gets it, right? That's kind of like the aesthetic experience in a nutshell. So, but what if it's much worse than that? What if the thing with poetry is like, what if the poet is sitting at home and in his loneliness, or her loneliness, squeezes the orange into a paper cup, drinks the juice, and then brings to the audience members the thing that's left over, which is, you know, when you squeeze an orange, the thing that's left over, what is that? The peel and the pith, right? So, and that's what the audience get. It's like a peeling, pithy poem thing that you can't quite taste, right? But you can imagine what it tasted like. You can write an essay about it. The whole class is writing essays. Whole English department. Like, it's not like that here at Kehillah, but you know, some schools are like that, right? That's the experience with poetry. And so my question as a poet is, how do you give the audience the juice? How do you give audience the fruit without destroying it? Now, of course, I'm only half serious, because, you know, I'm a rational person, like I said. I don't really believe in, you know, this kind of like pseudo-Kabbalistic, postmodern hoo-ha, although a lot of my best friends do, about sort of like this poem as a living being, as a golem rising out of nothing to life in front of the eyes of an audience in an act of, you know, improvisation, unexpectedly. You know, I don't believe in that stuff. I'm here to dispel that myth, you know, which is why this piece is called Poem That Needs a Title. And like I said, it doesn't have a body. You know, but, you know, who knows? There's still time. Very little time, but some. So I wrote this poem that needs a title when I was driving down 17th South. You guys driven down 17th South to Santa Cruz? You know, it's like this, right? So I had a, pretty intense ride. So I'm driving down, and I have an idea for a poem. But all I can think about is like try not to crash, right? Because it's like, and I come from New York, like we didn't drive a lot, right? So it's just like going like this, and I'm trying to think of my lines, and I can't write it down. Although I must say, you know, a real poem is like, it is like driving and texting, or drunk driving and texting. It's like that. A real poem is like that, except who are you sending the text to? You know, some invisible reader or some invisible reading committee. Sounds pagan, but but you know, that's like the real poetry experience. So I'm trying not to crash and trying to think in the meantime, and I can write it down. And it's sort of like, you know, the past 2 minutes, or I'm trying not to crash, but then there are moments of clarity trying to think, right? And so right there on 17 South, I knew I was writing a poem without writing it, and that I would perform it again and again, and that every time I would use completely different set of images and different set of words. So thanks for coming for that ride. Thanks for listening to my set. I'm Marmer, and this is John Schott.